You're listening to Build Your Happier Marriage podcast, formerly known as the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast. We recently made the change and are working on updating the website just for your information. Our goal remains the same, is to help you experience a happier marriage so that you can fulfill the God-given vision for your life and family. Today's episode is titled, He's Chasing Dreams, I'm Drowning in Dishes, Finding Balance When Your Husband's an Entrepreneur. This episode will focus on why it's crucial for you as a wife of an entrepreneurial husband to understand your partner's or your husband's mindset and what both you and him can do to support each other in this challenging journey. Stay tuned.
And welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Imagine this. Your husband is working tirelessly on the side business. He's driven by a dream of a better future. All he can think about is what the future will look like when this business begins to run like a well-oiled machine. He dreams this. He sleeps, he wakes every waking moment. As you know very well, his mind is on that. Even sometimes you're together and you're wondering where he is, and you immediately think, his mind is on this business. He's trying to get it together because in his mind, it is your future as well. And while he's doing that, you're handling work, kids, the household, and you're feeling overwhelmed and wishing he'd notice your struggles, wishing he would just take a time to acknowledge you and what it must be like for you. And the thing is, you're possibly thinking, why should it only be you who seek to understand his mindset? And what about me, you might be thinking? What can he do to support you better? That's also a part of this episode that we're going to talk about, because he also can play a role beyond what it is you're experiencing even at this time. So in today's episode, we'll explore the reasons behind this dynamic and see if there's any of what I say resonate with you, right? What steps now can be taken to foster a supportive and balanced marriage, balanced partnership, balanced relationship. And this we'll do right after this.
So, the big question is this. How is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
Now, why is it important for you to understand your husband's mindset as we begin to unpack this episode? Why is that so? May I just suggest some things that possibly you may not be thinking about because of your emotions, what it is you're feeling and thinking. But may I suggest that something that is true about him, and one of the reasons I know this because I have lived it. I have possibly been living some of these things I'm talking about, or I am further ahead than he is. And so I have been there. And here is something that I want to bring up and mention just in case you may not be thinking of this, and that is his fear of failure and the strong desire to provide a better future for the family. He internally is being eaten away at that. And he's very much aware that, he's been putting in the work and at the expense, your expense, and possibly their family, the kids. So he's very much aware of that. So the guilt over not being able to support you more actively is also at work. It's also something that is eating away at him. And then he also remembers the biblical reference about what his role should be in Ephesians 5:25, where it says, "Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." So he hears that often. Maybe this past week you had a chance to either study the Bible together or heard a message or attend church or something of that kind. And just this verse may have been brought up. And he is sitting there thinking, that's me. And he feels against a conviction because he knows that he's not loving you as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So can you just imagine all these things are stacking up and he is carrying that around? Maybe he has never, well, I wouldn't say never, but maybe he doesn't share this as often. Maybe he wishes you could read his mind, which some husbands think their wives are mind readers and should know these things, because we have a hard time communicating what we're truly feeling. We kind of need you to pull this out of us because we wish you would, because we know we want to talk about these things. But again, for us, and maybe it's our pride, our ego gets in the way. And I can raise my hand that I know that firsthand. But it doesn't mean that we're not thinking about it. It doesn't mean your husband is not thinking about that. But on top of that, it is the fact that he's also having to balance and this dance of doing the side business that he's working on in every waking moment or every free moment he has. But then to balance on top of that, his daily grind, his job, actually what's bringing in the money. And you too might be working a job. And I will get to that in a few moments, because you may not just be working in the home. You might also be working outside of the home. But he knows that, and he wishes that that would come to an end where he could give you the flexibility and the option to work outside the home if you so choose. But that's also eating away at him. So he's balancing his daily job and alongside the dream of building this successful business. So it's a pressure both within and without. And then also, as he notices sometimes the struggle that you are having, that you guys are having, you and him and the family is having financially. And so he wants to achieve financial stability and the freedom for the family. And it's eating away at him, especially when he is putting out money to work on this side business, because he may have gotten some help, maybe a virtual assistant that he may have be paid a little bit, about not much, but it's still something. Maybe he is involved in a coaching group. Maybe he's purchasing this, do-it-yourself stuff, or maybe he's trying to learn things while he does all this, and so he's purchasing self-help books or courses. Maybe he's a part of a mastermind or something that is putting money into, but then he's not seeing the return on that, and it's eating away at him, making him feel guilty. And he knows that. And he knows that you're aware of that. And maybe it's so great that you have been one that hasn't been bringing that up or trying to make him feel guilty about that. But at the same time, he knows you're aware of it. And it's almost like it's something that you just don't talk about, but it's there. It's right. It's that big elephant in the room, especially when you have to do something financially and you're struggling, because what happened is you were okay with him investing in himself, in the business, getting some help. But then also when you have a situation that comes up for the family, maybe to go on vacation or to get away for a weekend or whatever that might be, or purchase something, then it becomes like we need to look at our budget. Can we do this? And so those things kind of irks you and get in the way. But you might have been this wife who have just been not trying to add that to him because you're very much aware of that. But here's something that I want to also bring to your attention, and that is why your role is so crucial. Now, I want to use the soccer team analogy because, again, soccer is something that I know. I played that for many years when I was much younger. Unfortunately, I don't play that now as I used to. I wish I did. But that's a whole another story for another time, so let's just leave that there. But suffice it to say, this is the game that I know. I've played it many, many years. So in soccer, what I want to bring to your attention is every team member has a role, right? And this might be something that you know or are aware of. You may not know soccer as much, but you understand the team idea because you may have been a part of some team that has a similar idea, that every member has a role to play on that team. Your husband is focused on scoring goals, building the business. That is where his role comes in. And your role, which is so crucial, is to play a supportive role managing the home. So you are the one that's basically defending against other things encroaching upon the family. Like the defense or the midfielder in soccer, their job is to protect their goalkeeper so that they're not scored against, while creating space for the front players, the strikers, to score the goals. And so you're the one who's holding down the fort, so to speak. You're the one who feels like he's only focused on scoring the goals, but not understanding that he needs to come back and help to create plays and support you so that you don't get worn out. Because it feels that way sometimes, that you're carrying the whole team on your shoulder, right? And what I do know is every role is essential for the team's success, right? Because again, I haven't played soccer in the defense. I've played soccer in the midfield. I've played soccer in the front. And every time I played my role, my job was to stay in my position. I remember one time we were in this game and I was playing the right defense player. And I had run to make a play because sometimes as defense player, if we are on this offensive drive, we would try to create plays for other people. And sometimes they don't expect the defender to come up and score the goal, which happens ever so often. And I remember I was running and I was out of play, so I was out of position because I had ran up the sideline as fast as I could and trying to create plays so either could score the goal or be a detractor. But then there was a counter-offensive moment and I got caught flat-footed, so I had to be rushing back now to help out in the back because the other team was coming at us to score. And actually, I can't recall if they actually scored on us or it came close to that. And I remember hearing the coaches, reprimand and saying, Kingsley, you were out of, why aren't you in the back where you're supposed to be? And, of course, I was trying to help to create a play for the goal to be scored. Now, I'm thinking if we had scored a goal, I would hear all the heroes chant and celebration, great play, great strategy, great detraction, all those different things. And if I had scored the goal, you can just imagine how I would be lifted up on the shoulders of people if we won the game, right? But once you are out of position and the team is not making this offensive drive and scoring, then the whole team suffers. So I want to remind you, which I know you do this, and I don't want to feel guilty because you may say, Kingsley, I've been doing that. I don't need to be reminded. I've been doing that. But listen, I think it's important for us to remember that this is a position that you've signed up for, and it's something that you recognize is important for the team to win. I want to share this quote with you by Barnett Brickner, who says, "Success in marriage does not come merely through finding the right mate, but through being the right mate. And sometimes we have to be the best player in the role, in the position that we need to be. We have to focus on what is a role I've been assigned and work on that. Or in this case, who am I? It's not me finding the right mate, it's am I becoming the right mate? Am I blooming where I have been planted? And maybe God have designed it because he wants you to work on some things in the space, in the role you're playing, just as it is your husband. Just as it is your husband. So what I realize, this whole big picture idea, is that what we're trying to do here is maintain stability, because the home needs to be stable. And one of those things I find that in times like this, where your husband is out there and is hustling, he's doing all that, then what it is that I think you do very well. And obviously because he is able to not have to worry about certain things because he knows that you got it under control. And you might be saying, that's a problem. He thinks too much that I get these things under control, so he doesn't come back to help me in the role that I'm playing. And that's what frustrates you at times. But it enables him to focus on the business, and you are supporting that aspect of it. So your patience and support are key to his success. And it's so important for you to remind yourself that God will give you the grace, because he will not give you more than you can bear. And God knew this all along when you both came together. God knew at this point, at this stage of life, your husband will be doing what he was doing, and he wants to use that also to perfect you, to make you more like Christ. And maybe there's an area of your life that he's working on, as it is true about your husband. So here's what I think is important that you, dear husband, I want to speak to you for a moment here, what you can do to come back and help your wife in the supportive role that she's playing in the midfield or as a defender. You can express appreciation for the times she's been holding down those positions so that you could create plays and work at the business. When was the last time you've just simply said to her, honey, I appreciate you creating space for me to score these goals and to put in the effort and the time. And I really appreciate that. When was the last time, again, I don't want to guilt you here, dear husband, but it's important that you regularly acknowledge and thank your wife for her support and the efforts as a parent, having to parent the kids, maybe with their schoolwork, maybe even running these, soccer mom kind of things where she takes them to different places because you're not available, and you are so appreciative because it creates space for you to work without any kind of interruption. But remember now, that is just not how it should be one-sided. It's important for you to step back. Like in soccer, again, what I find, if you watch any game of soccer with the best players who are in the front, there are times they realize that the defenders and the midfielders of their team is under enormous pressure. And sometimes they realize the attack on the opposing side is just coming back to back and in a flurry, and they have to come back to help support the midfielders and the defenders because the attack is too much. And so sometimes you have to come back, dear husband. It's important for you to read the game and realize when it might be the time. And maybe if you guys are communicating, because in soccer we have to constantly be talking and making sure the other players know what it is we're trying to do. If they feel like the pressure is on or somebody is coming from behind, we need to communicate those things. So in your communication, it would help your husband and it would help your wife to know what's happening within the relationship. So one of the things I find is so important is taking time to listen to the concerns of your wife, right? It's important to take time to listen to her and do your part in trying to address those issues. And because she wants to know that at least, this is not just happening, what she might be doing is not happening without any recognition. All right. So it's important that is active listening, to the concerns and the feelings and sometimes what's not being said, the body language, maybe the subtle reminders here and there is also important. Another thing is also important, again, dear husband, and is to participate in family times. Maybe your wife is creating this place and is somehow wishing you to come back and spend some time, maybe having dinner together. Maybe it's helping with the chores. How many times when I work with couples or with the families, many couples as in a parenting role, in my counseling or as a relationship coach, sometimes I see where the wife would say, at least he could help with the kids or get the kids a bath when I'm trying to finish up dinner and maybe taking care of the dishes. Or maybe while I've created the meal, he could wash the dishes and I would take care of the kids. That kind of idea of this whole teamwork thing. And maybe it's something that she's been trying to communicate to you. And sometimes she wishes you just to see it and do something, not having to wait for her to tell you. I know sometimes you don't mind her telling you because you probably is so focused on what you're doing, these things doesn't really get your attention. And I'm not excusing your behavior, dear husband, but I want you to communicate that to her. Maybe be okay by saying to her, honey, please, I know sometimes I need to be aware of these things and a bit more self-aware of what's going on, but the times I don't, would you please remind me? I don't mind at all. It allows me to not have to worry about one more thing to remember. Now, if he asks that of you, please, with a spirit of humility and the spirit of Christ, don't see it as, why do I have to do this? Why don't you make the effort? If you cared, you would do something about it. That is not the time for that. Because remember, we're trying to follow the scripture in Galatians 6 verse 2, where the Bible says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear one another's burdens. And so if this is a burden for your husband, what about this is your opportunity to bear that? And maybe, husband, if this is a burden of your wife, then your job is to help bear that burden. And the Bible says when we do that, we're fulfilling the law of Christ. So as part of this whole thing, then maybe is creating space or time for the family and date nights, because these are things that you want to do on a regular basis to really strengthen the relationship and step away from the day-to-day activities, right? The things you do on a daily basis. I cannot tell you how often I've heard a couple who have said, man, we were able to get away, just the two of us. It was such a great time to be away. And they will say they made arrangement. Possibly it was the kids went to spend time with grandma or aunt or uncle, whatever the situation was. They made arrangement and made it work because they saw the necessity of that. I find sometimes when I'm very busy, and which I'm so grateful that my wife, she doesn't mind looking for places for us to go to eat on a date or for vacation away. Those are things I really appreciate because it's one less thing for me to do. I was recently sitting down with, actually my wife and I, with a couple, and we were talking about this very idea. And I said, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that I don't have to worry about this. And my wife doesn't complain because she doesn't mind doing the research, because she enjoys coming up with good ideas and good places to go. And when we go and have a great time, it feels as if, yes, it's a great job. And I would say, this is a great place. You chose a great place, or this was a great dinner. You chose some good meal, whatever that may look like. So it feels like, well, she feels valued and a part of that. So we were having this conversation, and I said, it doesn't mean I couldn't do this if I have to. I could go and do a research, but imagine the cost, because we're going to pay one way or the other. We're going to pay with our time, or we're going to pay with something else. And so I'm so grateful that I didn't have to find someone to do that on my behalf or take time away to go and have to do this myself. So again, it doesn't mean I could not, or it is something that's beneath me. No, obviously not. But having that, it makes a big difference. And I believe it's also true in your relationship and your situation as well. Again, this is your way of bearing one another's burdens, right? So it's important then that we understand, for you, dear wife, to understand your husband's mindset, to also understand and remember the importance of your role. And husband, it's important for you to also remember what you can do to support your wife better. How can you come back and help her to make the plays occasionally? It doesn't mean all the time. Occasionally, you can come back and help her to make the plays that are necessary, as she has been always trying to make the plays, the space for you to effectively operate in the position that you play so important, so very often. So taking these steps, I believe, will help prevent negative consequences on the relationship, on your physical being, your emotional well-being, your spiritual, your mental. These are the areas that are impacted when these things are not addressed or not somehow acknowledged in one way or another. Now, this is, I believe, a way then to help this idea of how to find balance. Find a balance in your relationship so that it doesn't feel as if it's one-sided, lopsided. While he's chasing his dreams and you're doing the dishes, you're drowning in dishes. There's a way to find a balance, and I hope that this episode allowed you to see the possibilities and see how that can be done. Now, we've come to the end of another exciting episode, one that was created and designed with you in mind in building your happier marriage. Because again, everyone have a different version of what that looks like, but this is to help to build your happier marriage. Now, what I have also done in light of this is to create a free downloadable PDF of the 11 rules for happier marriage. 11 rules for happier marriage that is free for the asking, and you can have that. However, it comes when you signing up for this wait list I've created. A wait list where I'm going to be coming up. I'm going to be sharing with you about Build Your Happier Marriage by Design. Okay, Happier Marriage by Design is a program that I'm putting together, and I want you to be on the wait list so that I can inform you once the program is set and is ready to go. I can give you the additional information. But the wait list will allow you to be able to get firsthand. It's only a limited amount of people that will come through the program in the first round. And so it's only those who are on the wait list. And I will, of course, from that, once we have our numbers, we are going to close that down. So if you are hearing this and you go there and the wait list is no longer there, it's because it's beyond, it's too late. So this wait list is just for this moment. And when you do sign up at the wait list, you will get access to the downloadable PDF, 11 Rules for Happier Marriage. You can find that at buildyourhappiermarriage.com/waitlist. So buildyourhappiermarriage.com/waitlist. There you'll find your free copy. My friend, God bless you. And I thank you for being here and listening. Would you share this episode with at least one other wife or husband? And I would really appreciate that. God bless you. And I'll see you on the flip side. God bless.